Hello, everyone, and welcome into the show today. My name is Trent Osborne. I hope you are having a wonderful morning, afternoon, or night whenever you're listening to this. And today, as you can see from the title of the video, we are going to be talking about my thoughts on the upcoming season for the Indianapolis Colts. For those who don't know me, I was born and raised right outside of Indianapolis. I'm a lifelong Colts fan. And that's something I'm going to do on this podcast, is I'm going to be transparent with you guys whenever I can. I am a Colts fan, but these opinions that I'm about to give you are as objective as they can possibly be. You aren't going to hear some Indianapolis Colts homer coming through with these opinions, that I can promise you. So we're going to go week by week. I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview at first on the offseason and how I think we did, and then we're going to go week by week with how I think we're going to do, and then at the end, we'll give the overall record. So just getting into the overview, I think the Colts did a fantastic job this offseason. Something we really needed help with was the defensive line. We signed a Justin Houston at a pretty good rate, I thought, for how talented I think that guy is. Some Colts fans weren't thrilled about the signing. I think he's going to be great. We re-signed Clayton Geathers and Kenny Moore. That's huge for the backfield. And we signed Swag Kelly, or more commonly known as Chad Kelly, which won't affect us on the field at all. Hopefully he never sees the field, but I'm sure it'll boost morale in the locker room. Why not? We drafted Paris Campbell outside of Ohio State, and I'm not the biggest fan of that pick. I think we should have went with DK Metcalf, but the guy's got speed. Andrew Luck has turned projects into making them look like superstars before, so I'm sure he'll do great in the system if Luck is healthy. And from what it's sounding like right now, there might be a big if. They're saying he has a high ankle issue. It came from a calf strain. It's very weird and wonky, the news we're getting on Andrew Luck, and no one's giving a straight answer from what it sounds like. Hopefully he doesn't play in the preseason. They're saying he's questionable for week 1. And this team will go as far as Andrew Luck's health allows them to. Not that I don't believe in Jacoby Brissett. I think he's very talented. I think we could put together a strong season with Jacoby at quarterback. But the Colts' ceiling as a team is greatly hindered if Andrew Luck isn't on the field. So going into the season now, week 1, Indianapolis is traveling to LA to take on the Chargers. Now, it's a week 1 game. Neither team is going to be where they want to be. But I believe that the Chargers are the best team in the entire league on paper. That defense is stacked. I picked them up in fantasy. It was a no-brainer for me. And you're going to see exactly why throughout this season. The Chargers are absolutely loaded. Come playoff time, that's a different story. If you listen to my Phillip Rivers podcast last week, and we'll get more into that in next week's episode, but I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. I think the Chargers take this game against the Colts week 1. I think the Colts will start out with a loss. The Chargers are looking very strong, could be a potential 1 seed in the AFC. Now moving on to week 2, the Colts are on the road again, taking on the Titans. Now, in fairness to Tennessee, they signed Cameron Wake. They improved the offensive line. The Chargers are a better team this year than they were last year, and they were a good team last year. But the fact of the matter is that the Indianapolis Colts own the AFC South. Period, point blank, end of story. Andrew Luck should be the official owner and proprietor of the Tennessee Titans organization. Andrew Luck is 11-0 against the Titans in his career. He's never lost a game to Tennessee. That's the best record for a single quarterback against one team in NFL history. Now, I know he has to lose at some point. At some point, the Titans have to knock off the Colts. But until it actually happens, I am going to use history as a guide for how I'm going to predict. Add that on to the fact that Taylor Lewan's probably not going to be playing in this game. I think the Colts are going to win this. Week 3, they're at home against the Falcons. It's at Lucas Oil. I'm not too worried. The Falcons are a good team. They can make some noise in the NFC South, but I think the Colts should win this and not have too much trouble with it. Week 4, the Colts host the Raiders, which the most interesting question about this game is Antonio Brown even going to play, let alone who's going to win the game? It would take an absolute fluke for Oakland to win this game. So just to update through 4 weeks, I think the Colts are going to start out 3-1. Now this match is going to be one of the biggest games of the entire regular season. Week 5, Monday Night Football. The Colts are traveling to Kansas City in a night game in Arrowhead against the Chiefs. Reigning, defending, undisputed, most valuable player Patrick Mahomes. Recently signed Tyrann Mathieu on the defensive side of the ball. I don't need to get into how good the Chiefs are. I think everyone is aware how stacked this team is, how great this team is. Super Bowl favorites for a lot of people, and understandably so. But the Colts' defense has improved since that 31-13 loss in Arrowhead in the playoffs, which knocked the Colts out. They won't be playing in a blizzard this time like they were in the last game. The Colts, at this point in Week 5, will have already played 2 tough road games in LA and in Tennessee. I think that the Colts are going to take this one. I really do. I think that Andrew Luck, if Andrew Luck is healthy, obviously, I'm not going to keep saying this throughout the podcast. All of this is contingent on his health. I think Luck shows up in big games when he has help, and he's got more help than he's ever had in his entire career now. I think the Colts are going to pull this game off. I think the Colts are going to win in Arrowhead, and I think this game could go a long way in the MVP debate at the end of the season, because I do think Andrew Luck is going to be in the conversation, as will Patrick Mahomes. Week 6, they're on a bye. Week 7, for the first time this season, we play the Houston Texans. It's a home game in Lucas Oil. If Andy Luck owns the Titans, T.Y. Hilton owns the Texans. It's ridiculous and just downright staggering the amount of dominance that T.Y. Hilton has had over Houston going into the playoffs last year. So this isn't even factoring in the 85 yards he had in the playoff game against Houston, in Houston, mind you. He was averaging 122 yards and a touchdown per game in Houston. Not overall, just in Houston. Add that onto the fact that Andrew Luck is coming off one of the most efficient years of his entire career. The Colts are going to take this one. Week 8, they're hosting the Broncos. The Broncos are really bad. Not much to say here. Should have no difficulty. Week 9 is a very interesting game because the Colts are going on the road to face the Steelers. Now, the Colts on paper are the much better team, but the Steelers have really had the Colts number for a while. The Steelers are 6-1 over the last 7 against Indianapolis. But this is a very different Steelers team, and I'll get more into my thoughts on the Steelers' upcoming season in next week's video. But the Steelers they're in a state of flux right now. Ben Roethlisberger is getting old. He can fall off that cliff at any point. There's one solid receiver, if we're not counting the tight end Vance McDonald. Juju Smith-Schuster is the only receiver on the team. And it's been a long time since the Steelers have not had 2 quality receivers on the field at the same time. And James Conner is nice. He's a nice player, don't get me wrong. But he's not Le'Veon Bell. And the Steelers showed how much they missed Le'Veon Bell last year. Not that they had a bad season, but they didn't make the playoffs, obviously. I don't think the game will be easy because playing in Pittsburgh never is, but I think the Colts pull this out against the new-look Steelers. I'm not feeling too great about their prospects this season. So through 9 weeks, I've got the Colts at a record at 7-1. Then the Colts are back home, taking on the Dolphins. Easy win, not much to say. Then the next week after that, week 11, they host the Jaguars. I think the Colts are on upset alert in this game. And I'll get into the Jags and why I find them so interesting later on in this podcast. But the Jags scare me more than anyone else in the AFC South, including the Texans, including the Titans. But I think the Colts at home pull this off. Week 12 now, the Colts are they're going on the road to take on the Texans. Just to hammer this point home on why T.Y. Hilton should be handed the deed to NRG Stadium. These are T.Y. Hilton's yards totals in his last 8 games in Houston. 78, 121, 223, 88, 49, 175, 199, and 85. Do I need to say more? That's a dub. The Colts record goes up to 11-1. At this point, I'm going to assume we're the number 1 seed in the AFC, but this last stretch is kind of rough for Indianapolis. The week after that, they host the Titans. Tough game, but I think the Colts pull it out. At Tampa Bay, unless Indy lays an absolute egg, it should be an easy win. Then, the second primetime game Indianapolis will have this season, they're going on the road to New Orleans to take on the Saints. Now, I think the result of this game all depends on the play of Drew Brees. Obviously, the Saints are a loaded team. Mike Thomas, Alvin Kamara, Cameron Jordan, very talented team. But this all comes down to the play of Drew Brees. And I think we're going to see a bit of a regression in Drew Brees this season. But I don't think it's going to be enough of a regression for it to matter. I think this crowd's going to be hot for this game. It's a Super Bowl rematch from, a decade ago, give or take. The Saints fans are going to be ready. The Saints are going to be ready. I think the Colts take an L here in New Orleans. The week after that, the Colts host the Carolina Panthers. And the Colts at this point, if you haven't been keeping track, are coming off 3 road games in 4 weeks. The Colts are going to be gassed coming into this Week 16 matchup. And the Panthers are going to be one of the best offenses in the entire league. I think Christian McCaffrey is going to have a breakout season. I think Cam Newton is going to return to form. He had a very good season last year, but I think we're going to see Cam get closer to that MVP level we saw him at in 2015. And I think the Colts take a second straight loss here to Carolina, dropping the record to 12-3. Now, Week 17, last week of the regular season, the Colts have to travel to Jacksonville. Now, I find the Jacksonville Jaguars very interesting because I think on paper, they're a better team than the Titans and the Texans. Last year, I don't know what happened because through 4 weeks, the Jaguars were looking as if they were going to make another run at an AFC championship. They beat the tar out of the Patriots. And then everything went off the rails almost like that. I couldn't tell you what happened. But they've made an improvement at quarterback now, signing Nick Foles. I don't know how he's going to gel with D.D. Westbrook and Leonard Fournette and just that offense in general. But on the defensive side of the ball as well, that defensive talent stacks up with anybody else in the entire league. The Jaguars should be a very formidable team for anyone coming into this next season. And I think the Colts are going to drop this one too. I think the Colts are not going to be rested up coming into this game. They've taken a beating these last 4 or 5 weeks. So I think the Colts are going to drop their last 3 games, finishing them off with a record of about 12-4. A first-round bye in the AFC playoffs is very likely, but to find out if they wind up the number 1 seed, you'll have to tune in next week when I go over the entire AFC playoff picture, how I think it'll shape out, and who I think is going to represent the conference in the Super Bowl. As always, I can't thank you guys enough for watching and listening. I hope you come back next week. Next week is going to be a very fun video. I've got a lot of stuff lined up, production-wise, coming out in the next couple weeks that I can't wait to show you guys. And I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you guys for listening. I'll see you guys later.